Hello and welcome to Associate Professor Liz Mackinlay from the School of Education. And we've just found out too that Liz has just been appointed the UQ Chair of Ethics. So congratulations.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, what I thought we could talk about today is, because this is a quick tips session, is just about the ethics application form. I know a lot of people really balk at having to fill it out, and it's difficult and you forget how to do it in between and so on. So I thought you would be the best person to ask for some quick tips. So I might just jump straight into it. What kind of preparation do you think people need to do before they even open the application form?
It's a great question, Kim, and absolutely we would love it if everybody could become familiar with the national statement in relation to conducting research with human beings. In the national statement, there are 4 principles that are really important to become familiar with because each of the 4 principles underpin every single question on the ethics application form. So the 4 principles are research merit and integrity, respect, beneficence and justice. So take some time to have a look at just the way the national statement describes those 4 things. And when you're responding to every single question on the HREA form, think about how those 4 principles are filtering into your response. If you do that, there is not one single question on the application form that is the same, and it will ensure that you are actually addressing and thinking about what the application is gesturing towards in terms of ethical research practice.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic advice. Thank you. I guess the next question would be around actually writing the application. I mean, it's quite, it asks you to fill in a lot of boxes and so on. Do you have any tips about how to approach that writing task?
So the writing of the application I know can be tedious and maybe a little bit daunting, but one of the things that's really useful for us as reviewers is for you to make sure that you include as much detail as possible on the form and in relation to every single question. We don't know all of the nuances and fine details of your research project, and if that information is not included in the form and or in the project description, it makes it difficult for us to make an assessment, which is when we might come back with more questions. So detail, detail, detail. You cannot put enough detail in the application form. We don't have capacity to sit down and talk with you or to give you a phone call. We can only assess what you give us. So make sure you include as much detail as possible so that we can understand the particularities of your particular research project.
Well, that's great advice. I wonder if, you know, I'd never thought of it before as, though I should have, being a writer, of writing it for a particular audience. But you're right, you've got to make it, not easy, but you've got to make it so that it's legible for the assessors. So what's your thoughts on like the tone of the document? I mean, nice and plain language?
Well, plain language is important because we can never assume that the person reviewing your application is an expert in your area. The plain language is important, but it's also quite refreshing when we read applications where it's almost like you're having a conversation with the reviewer. You're sitting down and explaining in a more conversational style. So we absolutely don't mind applications that come written to us in the first person. I will, that's perfectly okay. It gives us a sense of who you are and what you're trying to do. So, but equally, third person approach is fine as well. But really, I guess it comes back to that idea that you need to find a way in your writing to take us into the project. And we know that you can't anticipate everything that's going to happen or might happen, but we want to make sure that you've considered every possibility that might occur when you're doing it. And one way to think about that is to have a conversation with us as reviewers. So I know many of you have probably put in ethics applications, and a lot of the responses and questions that you get back are really about asking for more detail and for you to share with us more of what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it. So that idea of detail plus a conversation with us about your project, I think is really important.
That's such really, really great advice. I'm in the back of my mind, I know I've got to do one in the next month or so. This is so helpful. So my last question then is, because it is so daunting, where do you start? Where do you start if you're filling out an ethics application?
This might surprise some of you, but one of the easiest ways to start thinking about an ethical clearance application is to actually go to the end user, and that are the people that you want to work with. So we would suggest one way to approach it is to write your participant information sheets and consent forms first. If you think about the participant information sheet, it's meant to be usually, we hope, no longer than one page, a very quick, snappy, everyday, ordinary language explanation to invite people into your research. So if you can get that right, one page in everyday language, there's a good chance that you've got your project really clearly mapped out in your own mind in terms of how you're going to approach it and how you're going to work with people. So on the information sheet, we would include things like, who am I? Why am I doing this research? What's the benefit of this research? What am I being asked to do? And how am I going to be looked after? In terms of my identity, the data, my privacy, and also information around how is my personal information and data going to be used. They are all of the things that are in the application form. So if you can get them right in your participant information sheet, then there's a good chance you're going to be able to fairly easily respond to the questions on the HREA form. Another thing to remember too is that the participant information sheet and the consent form are not the same document. They are different. We need two separate things. So writing the participant information sheet first, then going to the consent form and pretty much replicating everything that you are asking participants to do in the consent form is the way to go. So getting those done first and having a look through them and sharing them with colleagues or your advisors is a really good way to find out if you're on the right track in terms of the ways you're going to respond on the HREA form.
That's so useful. This has been such a useful conversation. I mean, I know I'm recording it for the faculty, but I found this personally incredibly useful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also, I'd just like to say, you know, Ethics Review, we're trying to enable research. So please reach out to us. I'm more than happy to answer questions via email. And we have a wonderful team of ethics officers. Michael J and the team in JD Story are always there to help you. So please remember, we're here to enable your work and we're happy to help as best we can.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. I'll turn the recording off now.
Thanks, Kim.